to this week's episode of the Art Wisdom podcast. And if you've been with us for a little while, you know we were the entrepreneurial artists. And we still love that name, but we were finding like every time we did something, it's really hard to spell.
It was very hard.
And it wasn't just us, was it, Kat? So we thought we could make it easier for people to find us. Art Wisdom. So we got Art Wisdom with Chris and Kat. So we got new branding, new colours, and just a fresh new look. This week we're talking about prints. So we all do this amazing work and all these beautiful paintings, and they're just one-off sales. So you got to do more with them. So making prints is like an ideal way to go. You can just, reproduce as many as you like.
I agree. I would say that it's 90% of my business. More than that, maybe 95% of my business is prints, because wow. I think once you've made intellectual property, to be able to share it with more people, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think it takes you from being a laborer to being able to really profit from the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. It turns actually your art business into a real business. I feel like a real proper business, because you can actually, we're only one person. And if you're lucky enough to sell your art for tens and tens of thousands of dollars, then you can make a living from what you could actually do yourself. But otherwise, as soon as you turn them into prints, you have got a limitless capacity of earnings. So it's a must.
Yeah, I think it opens you up to new markets as well, because not everyone that can afford an original, and that's totally okay. I feel like it allows people to have access to it, which is really exciting. I bloody love prints. So, but making them is a challenge. So Chris, what's been your experience so far?
I say it can be a challenge, because it's just a whole new learning curve again, isn't it, Cass? You've got your pass.
Oh yeah, I would say, look, I mean, printmaking is its own profession. It's not, so, and I think you can forgive yourself for being a little overwhelmed when you start doing it, because there is a lot to learn and there's lots of ins and outs. So, and I definitely feel like, I've been making prints now for 5 years, and lots of different types of prints as well. And I feel like it would be nice for people not to enjoy the pitfalls and the challenges. So it would be good to share a little bit about that. But talk about your prints first, if you want, Chris.
Well, I'm doing prints of my textured artwork. So getting a good image is like the first thing that was absolutely a challenge to do,
Yeah.
If you can go and get them scanned, that's fantastic. But from what I was doing, the scanning was at least $130 a scan. And I've got about 40, 50 paintings that I would like scanning. And so it just makes it not that feasible to do. So that was a tricky thing. And then also you don't even know what's going to sell. So that was my dilemma, because you might sell 10 or 15 of or whatever it is of one painting and never sell anything of another. So it was like, how was I going to get around that? But getting around it, for me, it was, I have to find out how to do it myself and start photographing them, which is a completely new skill again. And that's something that we'll tackle at probably another time. But for now, get them scanned. You get them scanned all the time, don't you, Kat?
I do. I've tried to take photographs of my own paintings, and I do, but I can never do it good enough for me, because I remember walking into my first digital reproduction place. So there's two different ways. Obviously, you can get them scanned on a flatbed scanner, or you can have it digitized, which is usually using a camera and an expensive camera and a lighting setup, and a light controlled room, and almost like the acoustics of the light are very, very highly controlled. And so I was that was I remember walking in with my art thinking like, I am a terrible, not that good artist at this point. Do I even belong here? Because it was like very technical. It was very overwhelming. But I feel like for me, I kind of like set a standard that now I'm just very familiar with. But for me, it was a very different experience because I was running a Kickstarter project where people pre-ordered, so I knew exactly which ones people were ordering. So there was kind of like guaranteed sales. So I knew what to get scanned. Whereas I know it would be challenging, although I would suggest like doing a quiz or a poll or whatever, even if it's just like a little, like adding a few pictures on a Instagram or Facebook post and just being like, which one do you think we should make into prints? And then just seeing people's answers and going off that. Because it's hard to tell, like as an individual, like, and I can honestly, every time I run a store, I'm always like, these are the prints I think will sell. And they are never the ones. I can't gauge my own audience. You think I would do at this point. But once you've got those scans, the actual printmaking, which we'll talk a bit more about in this podcast right now, there's a lot to it. From different styles of printing to different papers to even metal and acrylic prints, and and where to have them printed. Do you have them printed locally? Do you have them in the way you can sign them? Do you have it as a drop ship? Like there's a lot. So with you, Chris, like how did you go about doing yours?
Oh, well, investigating different printers really, and finding somebody who I resonated to work with, and that's taken time. I've only been through 3 printers, but just getting somebody to understand what I'm trying to do, and because sometimes they can be absolutely too, I say too perfect, but only that they want to be. And I'm not saying I'm shoddy and not want to do things right, but when somebody is so pedantic, that doesn't work with my style. I had a meeting with a printer just a few days ago, and he just got me spot on. We did a few samples, and it was like it was really hard to get the exact color of the painting and the exact thing. And what we'd produced was a beautiful print, and I suppose you're looking at it from, I say, a layman's point of view. They look at it and go, that looks amazing, it's beautiful. But like as an artist, we can, like, I know I've been doing it myself, is like really going down, that color's not exactly right, but that color's right. That one's not. And it's like, oh my God. At some point, I suppose you could just go stop and go, this print actually looks amazing as a standalone product.
Right, because I think no one's really ever going to have it side by side with the actual original painting. So that is a very good point. And I do think that you can improve the potential to get the correct colors by having what's called a Macbeth chart. It's like a panel with lots of different colors. You can buy them off eBay for, I don't know, $20, $30 or something. They're not too expensive, but you can use it to help you color match in Photoshop, which is very helpful. But even then, right, it's like how the printer prints sometimes is a little different. Getting the right color profile and all of that kind of stuff is its own thing. And often I would say, my prints don't emulate my originals perfectly. And I don't know if I want them to be honest, because I think sometimes what turns out with, and it depends how you paint, right? But I paint with a lot of layers, so a lot of glazing layers, and the way that the light interacts with oil paint, if it's got like multiple layers of glaze and then the light is going through the glaze, bouncing off a white background and then going back through the glaze, it gives like a color effect, which I don't know if it's feasibly possible to create something like that in a print. But so I create something that's slightly different, but it gives me the same vibe. I kind of like that. I don't know if that makes sense. So like whilst it doesn't look like the original, like I feel like it's as close as you can get, because I think that that's the beauty and specialty around having original paintings, and in particular for yours, Chris, because I feel like it's like being able to represent the texture well is a challenge with a print that's 2D. You know, it's not a 3D print. I mean,
they're coming out amazing. The texture thing is fantastic, you know, because I'm using a really good camera because I am doing them myself now. So that's amazing. But the colors, you know, and it came down to, like, and the printer said, it just has to look beautiful. And mine pop as well, because mine pop. So I thought, well, that's what it's got to be. And that's
right.
Yeah, it was great when he said it, you know, and I thought, yes, that's what it needs to be. It's just got to pop, and the finished product just to look really pretty and beautiful. So yeah.
I love that. I'm glad. I mean, you look sheepish when you said you've gone through 3 printers. I might have gone through 30. So like, don't feel bad about it. Just get to, but also because I think for me each year I want to do a different style of printing. Like, you know, I'm doing printing on acrylic, so it looks like printing on glass, printing on metal, printing on glow in the dark. I love glow in the dark prints. So there's always lots of challenges around creating these things that don't, in particular if they're not pipelines that exist. And I think one important thing for people is to understand like how like, I think something that's important to talk about is like how hands-off you want to be in the print process, because there are lots of services that you can upload your stuff onto a website and they will print it and ship it and do all of that, you know, and you won't even touch nor see the prints. But there's also methods where people buy their own printers. Like, I've bought my own printer and I was doing my own art prints. One of the things I realized is that I wanted to be an artist, not a printer. Like, don't get me wrong, I sold a lot of prints, but I didn't really want that to be the thing that took up a lot of my time. Now, at the time, I was doing like a very specialized type of printing, which I could not get anywhere else in the world. Only I could do it. But the reason why I still have a $40,000 printer that I don't use, which is a terrible, terrible waste, is because I don't want to be a printer. I want to put all my time and energy and effort in. But I have seen, you know, I see it on TikTok, some of my favorite artists, you know, and they'll be painting away and they've got a printer in the background and it's doing the prints, you know, and that's perfectly fine. You know, so one of the things when we look about printing is like which papers and inks to use. And I think that's a good question that a lot of people have, you know, and there's this thing called the archival standard, right? So archival standard by the Fine Arts Guild is rated at 80 years ish, I believe, in archival settings, right? That they will receive no notable fade or whatever, right? So basically, archival standards, actually, what most people don't realize is literally in a folder, in a controlled environment, hidden away, because fine art prints, when they are, if you're buying them as a pure investment rather than a thing that's nice for your wall, you know, they're kept away from damaging UV, because UV obviously can really fade prints. And I think this is why, like, getting proper prints done rather than printing it on your inkjet printer at home, right? Because I don't know if you've ever printed a photograph of like family or friends, and then you put it on your fridge, and then like, I don't know how long later, like a couple months later, and it's faded the house, like it looks like shit. You don't want that for your artwork. So, you know, there's lots of different terms that I think is important to talk about. So firstly, this archival standard. So primarily, it goes in about not having a optical brightening agent free paper, right? So normally white paper, like wood pulp, isn't pure white. You know, wood pulp is kind of this off-white color and it's bleached to make it white. But that bleach also eats the ink. That's why they fade as much. The second thing is having a good ink. So, you know, Epson used K3 inks. You can also use, I often use UV printing, which kind of prints with it almost like a very fine resin, and then it almost like when you get your nails done. A good segue to my nice new nails. You know, when you get your nails done, you put it in the little like UV oven and it
Mm.
bakes it. That's basically what a UV printer is, but obviously little fine spurts of print that it then, but that is almost because it's like a very solid resin. I mean, that's very, very light fast, although that is not recognized, I believe. I don't know if it is or not, but I don't believe that's, I would have to double check, but I don't know if that's had like Fine Art Guild approved. But the way that the guild works, usually you can actually look up, is this paper and this ink combination recommended by this guild? And in order to be recognized, they have to do special testing. So they take it to a test where they basically shine intense UV lights on it for an extended duration period of time to test how light fast it is, i.e. how quickly does it fade? Because of course, you know, if you're wanting to hit 80 years with 0 fade, you're going to have to make sure that, you know, the paper and the ink combined works well. So you'll find like a lot of people, instead of using actual wood pulp paper, will use something called a cotton rag. A vellum is like the texture. So I personally prefer untextured, but you know, if you're doing a watercolor, you kind of want it to feel like the watercolor paper if you're making a reproduction print. So you know, you might want that texture in there. So depending on whether you want, you know, and if you're a photographer, you might want to have glossy. I don't like glossy for my own stuff, even though I varnish my own paintings. I don't know, it's a bit weird, but I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? What's your take on glossy versus non-glossy paper, Chris?
Oh, I get matte because I want the artwork to actually do the job, not the paper. And I also like it textured. So, yeah, I'm using a 310 Canson paper, which is slightly textured. But if you speak to the printer, like the printer will set you up with, if you're going to, you need to go to a fine art printer. You can't just go to any printer to get this done.
Right. That's a good point.
And they'll also give you samples of all these papers, won't they? So you can actually feel them. For me, that's what I needed to do, to actually feel the paper, because I know, you know, all those stats that you've just done. For me, I'm going, you're the fine art printer, give me stuff that's going to last. You know, your stuff there. He's giving me this.
Make you look good, all right?
Yeah, you look great. You know, you've done all, you've learned all of that because you've had to for what you wanted to do.
Right.
So who's, you know, if you go to your printer and it shows you all the papers that are suitable, then you can feel them yourself. Like I really don't like you like the smooth. I don't like the smooth at all. One printer did one thing on the smooth for me, and it's like, it's just not my thing at all.
You know, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of the strokes that you make are bold and gestural. So when you have bold gestural strokes, the texture, I feel, really adds to it. Because I often, and I think if you're doing a lot of fine detail, and you know, especially mine, I have like these really smooth gradients where texture just looks like shit. It looks awful on my paintings. So you know, I think the very first set of prints I did actually was a textured paper, and it was a cotton paper that I used, or a cotton rag as they call it. People think because it says the word rag that it's flexible, but it's not. It's dense. You know, you mentioned 320, which is how many grams per GSM, grams per square meter, I guess. Anyway, GSMs, how thick it is, right?
Yeah.
For me, I wanted that nice thick texture thing, but I have it thick and feels good, but it's very it's smooth-ish, the very, very mild texture. But not too much, because I feel like it's distracting with my work. Whereas I can imagine for your work, just texture would be amazing.
Yeah. So I suppose it's style of artwork that you have to go, well, look at that, to look at what paper that you will put it on.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so the other thing is obviously, as I mentioned, like this OBA free, but also acid free paper. And it is something that you should, as an artist, every artist should know about and look out for, because it's what your collectors are looking out for, is like this archival standard, right? And if you don't know, you can, as Chris said, you can just ask the printer, and they will be able to let you know like what is the best standard. Or you might not be interested in the standard at all, and you might not want to make archival prints and go for a much lower price point if that's what you're aiming for. And there's honestly nothing wrong with that. No judgments here. So, whatever works for you, because, we're specifically looking at fine art printing, but sometimes you want to just print a calendar, and you might, and the whole point of a calendar is there for a year. It's not there for a lifetime. So you won't necessarily be like, I want to print a calendar on a archival rag vellum made of like 100% cotton. You know what I mean? It would be bloody pointless. So I think like context of what you're printing is important, in the way that you get those like ancillary products made. It's kind of a different process than the fine art one, and you'll often hear it referred to as a giclée print, which is, I believe, French for spurt, which is basically the equivalent of a jet printer, which is what most printers are. But of course, they're using like these specialized inks and specialized papers. I think another thing to look out for, which just made me think about, is, I just believe in always getting a test print and always being able to see it, because there are so many variables, and it's easy to get it wrong.
And I think it is as well, you probably need to learn some kind of Photoshop or Photo Elements or Lightroom or something like that if you're going to take any pictures yourself, because if you want to start off and then take your photographs yourself, you're going to have to edit them with something.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think and I think that might be a barrier to entry to some people, but even just having a discussion with your printer saying, if I just need to adjust the brightness of it, is that something that you are capable of doing, and can I sit with you and work it out? Like, I always think that my challenge often has been during the pandemic, is not being able to be in the print shop and being able to do a test print and being like, yeah, we're different, because I can get that iteration done in an hour. Whereas if we're sending it back and forth with post, which is what I've been doing at the moment, it takes ages. But I've got to be honest, I've been using a company called Print Space, who integrate directly into Shopify, and I rate them. So it's called The Print Space, I might add. And they're based in London, but they've got a printing place in Germany. And I believe that at some point in the near future, they'll also have ones in other countries too. But from an end-to-end product solution, like, I don't touch the prints. They're like printed and whatever, all in the back end, printed, pack, shipped. Oh, what an incredible service. For me, that has absolutely freed me and my team to focus on other things. I also do other like more hands-on prints as well, but for me, that was really good to find. And for them, they also offer like a pack of different papers with like test prints on them. Obviously not your own, but like with other people's prints on that you can sort of see. But I know, like, for photographers, a lot of photographers like to go with that gloss, because I think that it is kind of, I mean, maybe this is a massive overgeneralization, but I would say that gloss is actually probably pretty good for photographers and people that do like resin pour art as well, where their art is naturally very glossy. And I feel like that would really bode well if you were a resin artist to get a gloss as well. But I think also it is down to personal preference, like, I just don't like art as gloss for some stupid reason, unless I would probably definitely forgive a resin pour one, because that kind of makes sense to me. I just, for some reason, and I don't know why it is, that I don't like artwork as gloss.
It might just be your style. It might just be that it doesn't suit your style, so it's like it's not even on your radar. So with your prints, I know that you've had a lot of people want your art and they couldn't afford them, and then you started doing prints, but you've done you kept to sizes A4, A3, A2 and all that. Standard sizes, which I have not done, but you have done.
That is such a good point. So sizing of your prints, right? It's not necessarily one-to-one of your painting. At the very beginning, I had all these odd squiggly sizes, big, large, all sorts of different sizes. And, you know, and what I found was when I was speaking to my collectors, they'd be guilty. They'd talk to me and they'd be like, oh, it's still in the tube, right? Because it was a pain in the ass to frame. And I hadn't even considered that. I'd not considered that, not even one little bit. And, but I think that's really important to talk about, right? I now make prints which are to a specific, you know, to a size, a frame size that is a common frame size. So and because most of my clients are in the US, like I will use prints, like a print size that is suited for a US audience, because that is, you know, I would say 90% of my print sales come from US individuals. So I want it to be so easy to frame that they never stay in the tubes, which incidentally, if you're selling international, having them sold in tubes, like I do have like some of the smaller ones that are sent in these envelopes, which again is very, very good to get prints across safely. But yeah, because but it only works with small pieces because they can kind of be sent as an envelope. You know, big prints, being able to ship them rolled in a tube opens up international sales, which I think is really important. But yeah, forgot that. I lost the tag of the conversation. What are we talking about, Chris?
The size of the prints. So with mine, I didn't do that. I have them like this size that they are. Only with well, I may change that with some others because it gives you the freedom to actually go, well, I can make another print of an image that I've got, but it will look different because I'm cropping. So I wanted the original paintings to look like the original. So the option that I've gone with is stretch canvases. So people don't have to frame them if they don't want to. But I mostly sell in Australia, which is different again because postage is like
do you sell them stretched or do you sell them in rolled?
No, I sell
they're already stretched.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Around Australia because it's not so bad. Sendall are very good with their postage rates. So I'm happy with them. But yeah, the international market, that's a different game again. And postage is another thing. But I just felt like I used to give people the option if they didn't want to go out and get a frame for, the
right.
No, I'm going to say the odd size, but
for international
size.
Yeah, for international. So actually, it's a good point you made. So when I sell canvases, I sell my canvases raw, just like a rolled canvas with the artwork on it. Again, because most of my people are international, shipping a big box international is ludicrous expensive because of what's called volumetric weighting. So, but often the canvases can be one-to-one. But like if yeah, for me, those are like the higher. So I would say that for my smaller prints, they're all fit. And you know what? This is a good point. For smaller prints, I've almost always stick to a standard frame size, but for the larger ones, they don't because you can't get frames that big anyway. And I think that's important to talk about, right? Because you kind of treating the two different clients very differently. People that buy, a 50 to $150 print are not the same as the clients that will buy $500 to $1,000 prints. I would hazard a guess that people that are spending, $500 to $1,000 on a print would have the means to frame it most likely, because it's not like an obvious thing to purchase at that price range if you couldn't, I suppose. But yeah, and also I think I used to always offer. Do I still do that now? Yeah, I offer a limited amount of size options. And I think this is super important to talk about because this is something that trips people up, right? They go, how many sizes should I offer?
Yeah.
More is confusing. And I always believe that complexity is the enemy of execution. When it comes to someone coming to your store, firstly, they've got to deal with navigating a website they've never seen before. Secondly, they've got to deal with choosing an artwork, which if you've got several available, that takes mental energy. And then they come to purchase And now all of a sudden they've got to choose the material, the size, which you put, like if you've got 10 different bloody sizes, what size do they want?
Yeah.
So I just keep it super simple: small, medium, large. The small are kind of postcardy size. The medium, I usually do like 18, is it 16 by 20 or something like that? 18 by 20, like, almost like an A4-ish kind of size. And then I do big, which is like the big feature piece. And that's it. Because I think too many options for size. I mean, because here's the thing: if you as an artist are struggling to decide, which size, I'll just offer all of them, then the person's also going to have that same quandary of like, what sizes should I offer? And I have been hovering over a buy button and have not bought because I didn't know what size to go with. And now depending on the store, if I'm doing one of my custom stores, I will have the small and the medium as a paper print, and I will have the large as a canvas. Because I recognize getting large sheets of glass for those frames is expensive as heck. Oh my gosh, if you think it's expensive getting an A4 piece framed, try getting one that's like A0 equivalent. These massive pieces, these big sheets of glass are not cheap and are absolutely precarious to transport too. They'll be paying sometimes 3 or 4 times the value of the piece in the framing. So I think that and God forbid if they ever drop the thing, so I always like to go with canvas for my largest ones if I am operating a store that allows that. Now sometimes I'm doing a store where the print doesn't offer canvas, but I much prefer offering those big pieces as canvases. I think, as you said, much easier to deal with as far as framing goes, because ultimately it's just your woods, your supports, and then it's just wrapped, and then there are nails, staples, or whatever in the background, and it's just being stretched, versus having to deal with all the glass and all. Makes me nervous.
Yeah, that's a good point there, because I think I've got actually I've only got 3 sizes on my website, and I only do 120 by 90 is the biggest size that I do, and that's just purely for postage, because I can easily get it round. So it's like, I just want to make life easy for myself. I can get that round anywhere in Australia at a reasonable price. And I do offer custom sizes though, so that's leaves it a little bit open, where you're not having maybe that confusion, but you say, if you want a custom size, send me an email, because you can have any size you want. But if you're offering all of that, as you say, that's just too much.
Yeah, and what you just said was perfect. So for me, the sizes are relative to an easy to access frame, but also for those bigger pieces, considering postage. And often we work backwards from postage. So if depending, because like I don't always get them manufactured in Australia. I've had some manufactured over in China, or I've had some manufactured in Singapore, I've had ones manufactured in Germany or whatever. We actually look at and ones in the US as well. Like, if we are having to ship this from location A to B or C or D or whatever, what is the size restrictions? Like those postage tubes, I believe there's a meter maximum, and I don't know, like I would have, so like you don't want to necessarily create something that would create because especially so we're doing acrylic prints. We actually downsized our acrylic prints a tiny bit because of postage limits. There'll be certain postage categories and bands. So often what they do is, the way the postage providers work is, up to a certain weight and up to a certain volume will cost X or X, Y, and Z. And then beyond that will cost a different amount. And then, they have these kind of like tiers. So looking at the different tiers, because I'm like trying to put together a package effectively of postage of of creating a print, getting it packaged nicely and getting it shipped to the end destination within a reasonable price frame as well, especially when I'm dealing with these, ones that sort of at the bottom end of the schedule, is that I don't want to create a print that, let's say, is $120 that is then $200 to ship.
You can find
because
that,
of the
can't you?
box size. Yeah, and you can find that. So, and that honestly, I think that when people sell prints, and I mean, we will do a separate thing on selling prints, is that can trip people up because, especially if they're including postage in their total costs, and then they realize I've not included enough of postage, or something happens. Now, bear in mind, the pandemic is not something that's like common, but stuff like that happens all the time. A postage provider shuts down and then you have to use a slightly more expensive service. Give no leeway, no room in their pricing to account for shipping mess ups, or having to go with a different service, or they've just changed their prices. And because you've only charged just enough with the postage to get it shipped, that now all of a sudden you've not got enough money for it. So that's something that's quite important. And it does impact how you print.
Yeah.
I would make massive prints otherwise.
Yeah, you could have fun with it. But, I suppose this all, and this is what I've experienced as well, is like, get all the back end sorted before you start and leap off. Because if you start going, oh, I'm doing prints, and start advertising them, and you haven't looked at what sort of postage is out there, you haven't seen if you've got a good image, you haven't really got a printer sorted, it's going to cause you like massive frustration and anxiety when you actually get an order. So I would say, I know it, we're all really keen all the time to get stuff out there and go, I'll just advertise them doing prints and see what happens. What happens is you'll probably get an order, and then you'll be doing all of this in a mad panic. So just take your time setting yourself up as for success. So you're going, okay, this is another part of my business now. So
you can do, let's say, you can gain the data though, and I think even for you, what you said earlier was like, I don't know which prints are going to sell. Like, you can do a poll online, right, without selling any. And this is what I would recommend, actually. And I know we will literally do a how to sell your prints next week, but just a little tidbit right now is, do a poll to figure out which sizes people are interested in, which designs people are interested in. And if they are interested, get them to sign up to your email list so that you can contact them again when they are available. But don't pre-sell until you've got product in hand. That's the one thing that trips people up time and time again. So even if it's your best friend, say, I've got to let me work it out first, but I will get back to you. Once you've got your printing pipeline done, it's done. You can keep on making prints, and it's a lot easier. But before you got that whole pipeline set up of the actual manufacturing side, because I think obviously on the face of it looks really straightforward, and I suppose in principle it is, but there are a million things that can bloody go wrong. So definitely getting from A to the final destination of having a product that you love and you'll back, because of course your prints are also an extension of what you're about, and being able to put forward whether you are all about just cheap and easy, that's okay. If you're about high quality, again, like, you got to make sure that your products match your values, whatever that is.
I love that, Kat. You just said, are you willing to back yourself? So that's like really important, actually. If you're willing to back yourself, maybe you just go out and get 2 scans or 3 scans to kick it off, because that's probably the part that is the trickiest if you're going to try and do it yourself, because that will give you a heartache. So
I get it.
If you're willing to
getting good scans is like,
if you do want to get up and running, and you feel like, okay, well, I'll get whatever 1-2 scanned, and then you can start putting these things in place. Then find out how much it costs to post you all over Australia or over the world, whatever you want to do, and choose your sizes that you want to do. You know, you're nearly there.
And I would say, like, use the data in your social media already. If you're posting artwork and you can see one artwork's got loads of attention, you don't even need to do, I mean, actually thinking about it, you can do a poll, but you might not even need to do a poll. You could literally just look at, oh, well, this one got loads of interactions and this one didn't. And you can use that as a which one to get scanned. And obviously you have to get them scanned before you sell the original, you know, because then it's a pain, it's a big challenge. And you know, I've had a scenario actually with that really big painting I did, you know, it ended up having to go into its final, well, actually, technically speaking, I got it scanned and then I had to hand the painting over, and then I looked at the scan and it was shit. It was awful. It was blurry. It was out of focus. I could have done better myself. I'm sure the person worked really hard on it. But it was terrible. Oh my God, it was awful. And I had to get the painting back. So fortunately, the painting needed to be varnished, which is a great excuse to take it to be scanned a second time. Well, I was lucky, do you know what I mean? That's not always an opportunity. Sometimes, you know, once it's out of your hands, you don't know if you're ever going to see that painting again, which I just want to add, it makes letting go of your artwork so much easier.
Yes, it does.
When you've got a really high quality scan, you've always got a piece of it with you. But also, I believe in the power of having a bank of your intellectual property. It's so important. You know, if you don't scan the artwork that you get, and you let it out in the world, which is fine. Look, I understand that there's price constraints and technological constraints to it, but you know, for me, even if you're pumping out paintings, to have a back catalogue of super high quality scans that you can call upon at any one point in order to launch a store, make a product, print it on a t-shirt, a cup, a mug, and whatever it is, you've got assets, because it's an actual asset, I believe, having that digital file. And I can't, as I said, my business, 95% prints, I would say, as far as revenue goes, massive. So you can only sell an original painting once, hopefully, but you can sell a print a million times, which is very important.
And then I've just done the same thing as you, Kat, didn't I? I sold a painting, and then, you know, without having back end stuff on sorted for this painting, somebody wanted a print of it, and they wanted the print, which was absolutely massive. If it had been a smaller, I would have got away with it, because it was massive. You know, I just couldn't do that print for her because the quality was just so poor. So what I actually did was I did the painting again. I did it, it's a different configuration. The other one was square, this is rectangular. So I actually, you know, ran up another painting of a similar thing, offered her a print of that, which, you know, that worked out great. But, you know, that was all because the photograph that I had of it originally was so poor that it just couldn't be, you know. Unfortunately for me, that painting got snapped up and sold. And I sold the print as well. So that worked out well all around. But it was a bit of an ordeal to, you know, have to tell your customer, because I'd spent so long with the printer trying to make it good, messing with it, because you just want to, you know, do the right thing. And I just thought, this just can't go out like this. It's just not good enough. So it's save you getting in those positions once you've sold it, you don't have a good image, probably just
for sure
let that one go.
Having the right resolution of image or scan before you print is so essential. I know we'll do a separate thing on scanning, but having a good high quality image to print, like if you're printing from a garbage image, it's going to make it very hard. You can polish it as much as you can. There's lots of tools. I use gigapixel to upscale, but you know, you really need a 300 DPI, so it's dots per inch, or actually technically PPI, pixels per inch, you know, image that you can print.
Yes,
because, you know, like, and the way that you do it is to tell if it's right is you got to zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, not just like when you have the whole thing on your screen. If it's a big painting, of course, even when it's on your screen, it's going to look good. But when you zoom in and zoom in and you see all this like pixelation and jaggedness, and you go, like, for reference, when I take photographs of my artwork, I can see all of the dust. I can see the whole weave of the canvas. I can see every little speck and drip of paint and the way that they string together and everything. That's how high. And sometimes I'm getting scans back that are like 13,000 pixels wide or 30,000 pixels wide in the case of the big paintings. Massive, big, oh, like they're bloody huge, and they're not just like JPEGs, they'll be TIFFs. So they'll be kind of like have all of the data in there. It's not compressed in any way. So that is something that's important to think about. But I think we should do a whole topic on like the scanning process, because it's a massive one.
it's so huge. You do have to learn this stuff. You have to learn. It's like, I felt like it was a different language. I'm all over the TIFFs and the PPIs now, but like I didn't know what they were. But it's like it's really great when you actually go to a printer and he's talking all this stuff, and again, got that. Is this a compressed file? Does this show all my layers of this? And you've got all the knowledge to be going, yes, that does that does this, yes, I've done that. And you think, oh, you do. There's nothing like feeling confident, is there, with like, what you're doing. Yeah.
But I would say that you only get that level of confidence once you had those conversations and you've asked all of the bloody questions that, and I think that's just,
maybe we just encourage you to ask all these questions.
Just ask all the questions every time you're confused. And that's what I do. And now I feel very, very competent at it, but I mean, it's a hard thing, so anyway, going on to top 3 things. Chris, what are your top 3 things?
Find a good printer, one that like, this is part of your team. As artists, like, I never sort of thought of like your team as other people who are doing things for you, because I've always worked closely with people, but a printer is part of your team. And if you can't talk to him, you don't relate to him, then or her. All the man be men. That's why I'm saying that. All the man be men. Then it's just not going to work, I spoke to the printer the other day, and like, my photographs are there, and he's looking at them, and I know it sounds very probably basic, but he said, you'll always have to do something on Photoshop with them. He said, I've been doing this for years. He said, the photograph you take will always need to go through some sort of software. And that was a massive relief for me, going, oh, that's okay then, because I always felt like, oh, I'm fixing them up or I'm doing something, but it's like, you'll never get a photograph which is, you're done, let's print. He said, you'll always put it through these things. So it was great just having the conversations, have conversations with your printer about anything that you're not sure about just yet. Second one, images are everything. Yeah, because I've been through that one where I'm trying to make an image really good and it's 72 resolution and I want to blow it up to 150 centimeters. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's going to pixelate all over the place. So, before you part with anything that you love, get an image of it, and there's only so much that you can do with an image if it's not good. And if you're going to take them with cameras, there's only certain cameras. Now, I thought I had a really good camera. It really wasn't for fine art, taking pictures of fine art. So that's another thing. Again,
do you know what's the name of can you remember the name of the camera off the top of your head?
The one I used before?
Or the one that you're using now?
What I'm using now is the Fuji TX20. It's fantastic.
Oh, XT20. I've got the same camera. How exciting.
Oh, do you? Oh,
that was unplanned. I didn't know you were going to get one of those.
Oh, it's fantastic.
These are excellent cameras. The
Just
X-Trans sensors are phenomenal.
There's the close-up thing that you can check the focus on it at the end where it goes right in. I can see every detail of the texture, the paint, and even ones where you know, there's the canvas on the background and I can see the canvas things. It's like fantastic.
That's amazing. I didn't know you had an X-T20. Welcome to the Fujifilm family.
And the third one, I suppose, sizes, you know, choose what sizes suit your audience. So it might be where they want them, where they can put them in A1 and A2. They might want a standard frame, but you might have the audience who actually doesn't want to do that. So know your audience with that. And then also don't confuse them with the sizes. I think 3 is plenty. And offer custom, but you know.
Yeah, I like that. Having 3 sizes, small, medium, large, and then a custom. Fantastic. Absolutely. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that because that basically serves everyone. Firstly, there was this jam study. I don't know if you remember. It's like this thing where in the supermarket they had like, and they were monitoring jam sales, and they had like an aisle with like 20 or 30 different type of jams. And then they changed it, and then there was just 2, I think. Oh no, I'll probably get in this butchering it, but you get the sense, right? And it was just strawberry, and it was like blackcurrant. That was it. They sold masses and masses of more jam when there was just limited options, because people didn't have to think. You know, if you take the thinking out, you go, when it's too hard, they just don't proceed. They go, oh, this is difficult, because people are overwhelmed. People are so overwhelmed. We're all overwhelmed. We've got screens and advertisements and noise and media. We're looking at news on 3 different screens. We've got all of this noise going on. Like, our brains are done. They just need kind of a simplicity in choices. And if you present more noise, people are just very like, oh, this brain's not working today. I'll come to it. I'll come and choose another day. And of course that day never bloody comes. So
I think that's one of the things that made Aldi popular as well in the day, because they limited when they first started off. You know, if you wanted one jam, or you know, there was only one make of that strawberry jam, one make of, you know, or whatever. They didn't give you all that overload, and I did quite enjoy that. So making it easy for our customers.
Nice. That's amazing. And that's all your top 3?
Yes.
Any extras?
No, go on.
Nah, great. Okay. So my top 3 are: number 1, get good scans. Chris, you just said it. Whether it's taking it yourself with something like a Fuji X-T20, or you know, I get them either digitized or like a scan. I'm getting mine scanned. I've never had them scanned before, but obviously scanning does create more texture, so you have to scan it one way, and then you have to turn it, you know, around, and then scan again, and then that is how you can you can use Photoshop to remove it. There's lots of YouTube videos if anyone's curious. Get good scans, because it's the value of having that intellectual property. I just bang my drum about it. If you're putting, and it, you know, and even if you can knock artworks out really quick, I mean, it makes so much difference. Being able to let go of your artworks, just knowing that if you ever wanted it in your house again, you could just print it again. Now, I know it's not the same as the original, but you can get 80% of the way there. And sometimes that's all you need. Number 2, always get test prints. Always, always, always. Just in the same sense that you always have to edit and tweak your files, you just need to get test prints. You need to see them physically in your hand. I will never sell a print without having a physical test print of a final one. And even when I'm working with a company who's really reputable, who always gets it right first time, every single time, I still ask for test prints. I always get a set, because sometimes it's not the printer's fault. Sometimes I've left something in there. You know, sometimes stuff that isn't obvious on the screen becomes very, very obvious. You know, so I always make sure that I do that. Always, always. Number 3, and it's something we've not spoken about, is adding borders for signing. You know,
Yes.
I think it's important if you're going to make, you want to make something a little special and a little, it looks nice and looks nice and professional. Now, bear in mind, canvas is different. You need borders to wrap around the edges so that it, and I would say like 2.5 inch. It depends how deep you want your borders. If you want your borders an inch deep, like 2.5 centimeters deep, you need it to be 2.5 inches from the edge of the image. And then there's always a choice of, do you want the image to wrap around, or do you want it? I always have my borders black, or maybe I want your borders white, but whatever it is, you got to leave room. So, and to consider like where your signature is. If your signature's right up tight in the corner and you don't leave any room for wrapping, then your signature is going to be bent in and around the back of the canvas. So leaving borders for framing is very important. But also I think that, when you're doing like limited edition runs, you kind of want to run, like you write in, and always use pencil, graphite, because ink can be faked. That's why they always recommend using graphite, because it's very hard to, you can tell the impression. So, you sign it on the paper. I always sign it a little bit on the white and a little bit over the print, just a little bit, so you can see that I've not just pre-signed the paper, because there was a big scandal, I believe, with big name artist. I don't know if it was Van Gogh or like someone of that level it might have even been Picasso, who'd signed loads of blank sheets of paper and they were still printing his work on them, even though he'd passed. Yeah, so I mean, you could just sell the blank sheets of paper with his signature. Yes,
yeah, that's right.
But you write the name sort of, and then obviously if you're having them serialized, there's room for it in the board. I'm talking about paper prints right now.
Yeah.
Now the point of the writing is it's got to be faint. Use a sharp pencil, make it faint. Because it's not meant to take over the image. It's not meant to be like I remember I had to search like, oh, the way sign a print, because I didn't know at the beginning. And that's okay, you learn, but nice and fine. Like use a sharp pen, a graphite pencil. Just a HB is fine, or a H pencil. That's fine. It doesn't have to be anything particularly fancy. You want it to be lighter, so probably more towards the harder than the softer pencil, and nice and fine. On that print, and it doesn't have to be limited. You don't have to do limited runs, but definitely with these prints, signing is nice if it's an option. Like I do sell prints unsigned when I'm not in the process, but even so, I still leave the white border, and I think that really helps with the framing process, because even if they have what's called a window mat, which is that square thing that goes around your print, the whole point of that is to lift the glass away from the print, because of course atmospheric conditions make it hot, moisture and all that stuff, and eventually if the print is against the glass, it fuses to the glass, and when you pull the glass off, it pulls half the print apart. So you definitely don't want that. So that's why we have window mats. But if you have a window mat and you've got that little bit extra, firstly it allows the framer or yourself to even use like framing tape to like hold it in place, so it's not just falling about in the frame. So loads of those things. So I would say always use a border if you can, and if you're doing a canvas print, definitely you need to consider that you have a border that's appropriate for how deep you want it to be framed. Really, really important. And that is my top 3.
Beautiful. Now with yours, signing them, do you write your title as well? Because I tend to write the title of the print in the white border and my signature. Nice. Do you do the same, or?
So, it depends how many prints you're making. Yeah. So I used to, my very first round, I wrote it. What I realized is that I'm very dyslexic and I often spelt things incorrectly. So that was great. So that was a challenge for me. I think if you're just doing 1 or 2, it's very manageable. So what I often do, and I mean, it's a bit cheeky, but what I will do is I will write it on a piece of, start giving all my tips and tricks away. I will write it on a piece of paper and I will scan the paper, and then I will actually put it into the whiteboard so that it is my handwritten, but it's actually printed section. But then the signature and the number will always be written by hand.
Right. So sorry,
and that's just because I'm terrible with spelling.
I'll just repeat that again because your internet went a little bit funny. So
okay.
You write your you write
on
the
a blank piece of paper. I will write the title on a blank piece of paper. I will then scan it, and then I will actually put it into the image so that it prints with the name now. And then I will do the signature and the number by hand. And that's just because, firstly, and it depends on how many you're printing, but I was printing them by the hundreds, and writing that many titles was incredibly exhausting. It was bad enough having to sign them. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when like we're talking, like I would be spending weeks signing prints, doing nothing else every day, or 8 hours a day. I'd just be signing prints. It was too much, and it was giving me RSI, to be honest. So I had those ones printed, and the numbers and the signature I could do by hand, and that's quite fine. But yeah, I would get it I now get it printed in the border, but I still use a pencil and I still make it look like it meshes in. But as long as the signature is graphite, that's the most important thing for me. You can even just use a nice font or something if you really wanted to. But if you're great at writing and you've got beautiful handwriting and you don't mind, always write your print, in the middle. Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. There's all these standards, but whether they're actually important to stick to, I don't know. The whole point is, if someone walks up to it, can they tell what it is? You don't necessarily have to put it in the middle. It could be anywhere, really. But, they usually say in the middle at the bottom. But you know what? You make the rules. You know, if you don't want it there, you can have it at the top if you want it. There's nothing wrong with that. So, and with canvases, I know you do this with your originals, I think, Chris, is you write little messages on the back, and I always sign my canvases on the back when I'm doing so I will print it and then I will sign it again. Obviously in the print is my signature, which is like made in paint, but that's printed on. So to authenticate that it's me, I will sign the back of the canvas, and sometimes I write a little nice message on there as well. I don't know if you'd want to necessarily do that with the paper print, but you probably could if you really wanted to. So,
yeah, it's fine if you're getting them delivered, to yourself first. But like I'm doing a few drop shipping ones now as well, so it's a different thing altogether, isn't it? So whatever.
And I think that there's fine to talk about the two types of prints differently, like to have these are like special hand signed prints or unsigned prints, and I price them differently as well when I'm doing it. So yeah.
Great.
All righty. Well, any final comments, Chris?
I think we probably didn't touch on too much limited edition and not limited edition prints. So maybe when we do the selling prints next week, then we can bring that into it as well then.
Love it. All right. Well, if you are listening, have you made prints yet? If you haven't and you're stuck on anything, write in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, let us know in the comments too. Don't forget to follow us on all the socials. We have a new name. It's Art Wisdom. We will put all the links in the description. Next week, we are talking about how to sell your prints. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.